Welcome to the Touching into Presence podcast.
This podcast is for people who are interested in bodywork, empowerment, and somatic-based practices.
I am Nikki Olson.
I'm Andrew Rosenstock.
We are certified Rolfers.
Collectively, we're trained in various movement and bodywork therapies with an emphasis on somatic awareness and client resilience.
Through conversations, our goal is to share and explore mind-body paradigms to offer empowerment possibilities.
Hey everyone, it's Andrew here and
Nikki.
And we thought we'd just sort of talk a little bit about us and how the podcast came to be and how things are going, and just share a little bit because, well, you may have noticed the first few episodes had me talking, and then had me and Nikki talking in an episode, and then all of a sudden Nikki's like there, and it's like, well, what's the deal with that? And so we thought we'd go into the deal with that. And it's not just that Nikki is awesome, because she is, but there's a story there. And part of our podcast is about, I think, humanizing things and sharing. And so let's share a little bit. So the gist from my side, and we can also be really interesting to hear if Nikki's side is the exact same as my side, is I had an idea a while ago about creating a podcast about embodiment and about Rolfing and structural body work and psychology and all the sort of stuff I was interested in. And it came out of listening to a lot of other podcasts that I didn't really vibe with. So they either had a host that was very, in my view, very masculine and aggressive, or very feminine and flowery. And there was a great podcast from a few years ago, but it stopped, that sort of, I think, fit part of that, and I wanted to have a voice that represented more. And my initial idea was to have a co-host, and I liked having a female co-host because, for those out there who don't know, I am a male by birth, and that's more or less what I identify as. And I liked having a female because I think it gives more area to talk about. And I think having, first of all, two people already gives you more space to grow, because what I think and what Nikki thinks might be aligned at some point, but at other points it won't, and it can grow. And then having that male-female perspective can grow more. Essentially, I started the podcast. I woke up one morning and was like, I'm going to make it. And it was a lot to do with having time during Corona, but also having talks with other people in the field, a lot of Zoom calls. And Nikki and I met, and I forget if we talked about this on the original podcast with us, but Nikki was leading some awesome movement Zoom calls through the Rolf Institute. And were they both through the Rolf Institute, Nikki, or was one through elsewhere?
No, one was through what Jim was doing through Rolf Talks, the private Facebook page, and he really liked it, or thought it was valuable information. And so then I shared it with the Dr. Ida Rolf Institute.
Yeah. So that's more or less I when we met, and I really liked what she did. And I was actually, it's interesting because when we talk to people on the podcast, they're like, so how do you guys meet? And we're like, oh yeah, it's been a few months. we just connected and got along really well. And I think what's really great about us is that we're both Rolfers that have, again, similar ideas, but we're different in how we sort of approach it. I can get a little bit more into the energetic side, you might say, and into the more less physical. And Nikki has that as well, but she also is, as well. I'll let her talk more about herself. But she's has a lot Pilates and fitness oriented kettlebells, bells. Which one is it?
Kettlebells.
And cowbells, just playing it around. And so we sort of just connected, and I thought created a great vibe. And so we tried out, and then it seems to work well. And we're guessing, we hear good feedback from people, so we're guessing it works well for you guys too. I have a tendency to talk a lot, so I'd rather have Nikki also share some stuff here too, so it's not just me mansplaining.
Well, yeah, so I am Nikki, and I was Andrew's second guest, I think, on the original podcast. And yeah, like he said, we connected through the movement modality webinar that I offered. And he reached out to me to be one of his guests, and that would be the second, third episode, I can't remember. So you'll learn a lot more about me through that episode, but afterwards, Andrew and I just started talking and sharing ideas, and our rapport was great. And he had offered me to be a part of the podcast, which I thought was awesome, because I also had an interest in starting a podcast, but just felt very overwhelmed with all the technology of it, editing and everything. And that is what Andrew's strength is. He had a previous career in that. So it was a perfect match for me to be part of something and not have to be overwhelmed with all the other back end production aspects of it.
Yeah.
And
you
I think
you can also hear Nikki is better at communication, and so I'm better at the back end stuff.
Yeah, and I think from both of our collective backgrounds, I think that's kind of the interest we're asking me to become part of it. Is I was offering all these ideas and other people that would be good guests, and so a lot of who we are bringing on are either people that we know in our own niche of colleagues, and then people that we're both interested in. And yeah, so it's been super fun to do this, and great to stay connected into the work, especially during, this is, the podcast that of probably many that are being birthed during coronavirus. So yeah, great opportunity to stay connected with colleagues and keep in the information, because I think, for us body workers, some people have gone back to work, some haven't. And for those of us that haven't gone back into working, there's something valuable in to be able to connect through conversations and stay in the work, because body work can be quite, well, in a way it's intimate, in the sense that you're really in communication with somebody in a very therapeutic framework. And a lot of people who are drawn to do that type of work, there's a certain kind of passion.
Yeah.
And when you're not it's not your typical day job of just showing up at an office and banging out your work. You show up and have to really be present, and you miss that if you can't do it. So,
and I think, like, going along with that, we're I think hoping or guessing that our main audience will be body workers or people in the field. So that's why we're always curious for people to write to us and let us know what worked for them and what they'd like to hear as well. But we hope as well to have, yoga teachers, because it all interrelates. If you're teaching yoga and you can listen to a little bit about how structural body work works, or if you're hearing about, like, our talk with Paul Linden, I think Paul's talk is great for everybody. He's talking about life, ways of working in life. But also thinking about people who are maybe interested in structural body work. So since Nikki and I are both Rolfers, we lean a little into that because it's what we know and what we love and what we believe. But we're also very open into having other fields, because, again, it all sort of overlaps at some point, or there's a connection there. So we're going to hopefully be having some yoga teachers and some Pilates teachers on, and they may not be structural body workers, but there's going to be something that is an overlapping or is a connection. And so we're hoping that our the people listening are, well, we're trying to, I guess, figure out sort of who is listening. So who are you out there that are listening? And so we can find out more, as well as, cater somewhat towards you. And yeah.
Well, and also I hope it's people that aren't in the necessarily in the structural integrative field, but may be interested. So I think this is, with all the different people that we're bringing on, really shows there's a lot of ways. It could be through a structure integrator, yoga, Pilates, gyrotonic, even regular old fitness. There's ways of meeting the need to be better integrated in our physical structure. And as listeners will hear, that when you are better aligned in your body, often the side effect of that is an ideal mindset. And who doesn't want that?
Yeah, true. So that's just a little bit about us.
Andrew, how did you come up with the name Touching into Presence?
So I actually created a little group of other people. There was about 4 people in this little group because I knew that even if it was just me being the host, I wanted other views. I didn't want to be stuck with my own blinders on and seeing only what I could see. I knew that having other voices would give me more knowledge and more to see. So I had a few people, and there was a rolfer dancer in England who came up with, my original name was Better Living Through Gravity. I really loved that name for some reason. It was a play on Better Living Through Chemistry. But we, as rolfers, we work a lot with gravity. And she came up with Touching Potential, which I thought was so beautiful in so many ways. And I really liked, I've been reading about different forms of marketing and like how do you come up with brand names and things like that for my own personal world. And I read how 3 is a powerful number. Like 3, when you're doing brand stuff, like having a 3 is usually sticks in the brain more than 2 and better than 4. And so Touching Potential had 2. And I was like, and Touching into Potential sounded creepy. Even touching into presence, it took me a while. Like a friend of mine was like, touching into X is a little bit like, it's just like it could get a little bit graphic, but touching into presence, it just sort of stuck. I thought presence has a lot to do with, it's a play on words in a few ways, but it's also serious. Like as body workers, as rolfers, as craniosacral therapists, I think even some forms of it, I think all people should have this, but especially when you're really working with people one-on-one in groups, a part of the work is the presence of what you bring. How do you show up for your clients? Are you there to listen, or are you there to drill? And if you're there just to go in and move muscle, there's nothing wrong with that. What I have found is that if you come in with a state of presence and like, okay, what is going to show up now, and not having preconceived ideas, but tuning in, that allows for something different to happen. So touching to presence was part about that, but also when you put your hands on someone, there's a whole language you can listen to in that person, in that body, whether it's through fascia, whether it's through lymph, whether it's through whatever you're in, and you can discern those different presences that are there. So it sort of came up with things like that. I'm an idea person a lot of times, but I don't, and I get excited. I'm like, let's do something, but I also know to like sit back. So I had to I sat with it for a few weeks, if not longer, almost a month, where people in the group were like, okay, that's great. Are you going to do something actually? Are you just going to have a name? And I was like, okay, let's go. So that's more or less how I came. I don't know if I've ever shared the whole story with you before.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought it was a fitting name.
Yeah, I had a teacher, my SLM massage teacher has her brand is called Touching Essence. And I had to sit with that as well, because Touching Potential and Touching Essence had a similarity. And I had to worry about her being like, are you stealing my identity? Even though there was no correlation. It was only when I was playing it in my mind, I was like, oh wait, she has that name. And I wrote to her and I said, hey, it happened organically, but we might go with this. It is sort of similar. I want to make sure you're okay with it, because I don't want to ride off of your, I don't know that whole saying, is it ride off your pigtails, whatever that saying is. I don't want to ride off your back without your blessing, even though there was no correlation. It sort of happened. But touching the presence sort of came, and I get ideas quickly. They're not always great. And then if I sit with them and I sat with it, and I just sort of like the name. I think it's kind of beautiful in its own way. Yeah. Now you know the the story of what you're now half of. So what I'm also hoping for the future for this, as the podcast sort of unfolds, is that we'll have more talks between Nikki and I, because we also have a lot to offer. But we also think that if we're creating this podcast, we want to have it grow organically, and part of that is us. We're pouring ourselves into it, and so we also want to share who we are and what we are. And so part of that also becomes like, join our Facebook group and ask us messages either directly or in the group. We want to be involved with, I'll say all of you. I mean, as the podcast gets bigger, it might not be all of you, because then it's like 1,000 people messaging a day. It's a lot. But essentially we want to, we're not doing this just for us. It's awesome. I mean, it's awesome that I get to have time with Nikki. We get along really great. We have great conversations. It's awesome that we have people on that we can learn from and share from and be like, wow. But it's ultimately not about us. It's about us wanting to share with the greater world of which you're all part of. So we sort of want to do stuff for you.
Yeah, I think Andrew and I both have really enjoyed the conversations that we've gotten to have. And we have definitely come at this with intentionally not being overly produced, that we do want our guests to feel comfortable, and we give ideas of what we're interested in hearing from them, but also lending the platform to them to speak of what they're interested in. So we have had great conversations with people who, for right now, we have already had some, and we're going to have some in the future, of some of the original students of Ida Rolf. And it's been awesome to hear the stories that have come from them. And we've gotten to learn a lot of what we didn't know about our profession and how it came to be, because Rolfing is still a relatively young practice, and Ida Rolf developed it kind of later in her life. So it was kind of left up to her newer teachers to continue the work.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where we've been at now, but then who knows, we'll start to drift.
Drift.
We both, like right now, I'm very much into how I'm using some of my downtime is taking a greater dive into somatic practices, and I'm really enjoying that. And I think we'll start finding some great thought leaders on somatic awareness and somatic practices.
Yeah, I don't know if I told you, actually, I just started an online course with Bonnie Bainbridge Cohen, and I'm hoping to have her on as well. I mean, she's a great thought leader in that. It's pretty amazing stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll sort of see where we drift. One other thing about that sort of the budget lo-fi-ness of the podcast, one of the things I like about that is, in my mind, it creates a way for you, the listener, to be more involved. I feel when I listen to very produced podcasts, they're great, but I feel very alienated from them because I feel like it creates a separation for some reason. It's like this artificial environment that you're going in and having this. Whereas with the way that we do it, in my mind, and I hope it works that way, because it's just like you're talking to a friend. And that's sort of what the theme is. It's like, hey, we're just calling up someone and chatting with them and hearing a story. And that kind of was my other origin of the podcast, was when because I travel so much, I don't talk on the phone with people a lot, because I'll be in, Singapore, and it's, 12 in the morning, and it's 5 a.m. somewhere else. And it's just hard to keep that up. And when I came home from Corona, I was having conversations with friends, and I was having these talks I haven't had in a while. And I loved it. And I said, okay, I wanted to find a way that I could share this sort of stuff out. And so that's one of the reasons I like the less produced way to it. And I try to edit the sound a bit to make it sound better. but I like the idea that it's just like we're having a conversation, and you're in the room as well. You're just not speaking, and that's sort of the intent there. So I hope it helps tear a wall down and bring all the people out there listening into the conversation more.
So please, listeners, if you have any feedback or maybe somebody that you would like to hear, please reach out.
Yeah, you can find us. We have a Facebook page, Touching into Presence, which anyone can join. Our emails are on I think every episode. It's on the main page. It's on the episode. We can share it here. Nikki, what's your email?
Nikki Olsen. I can be found at my website, which is nikkiolsen.com. Wow. NIKKIOLSEN.
How'd you come up with that name? and I can be found at my website, which is andrewrosenstock.com. ROSENSTOCK. And you can email us there or however. And we are, like we said, we're here for you guys. We're doing this, and if you have something that you think will be good, share it. Because we're both cool people. We're both smart, but there's a lot of stuff we don't know. All right. I guess we'll probably tune out here. Do you have anything more to add, Nikki? Are we good?
We're good.
Good. All right. We'll catch you guys later on.